Welcome back to Community Leaders, Episode 9. I'm your host, Todd Welsh, and today we feature Tony Dong, the owner-operator of Martinelli's. I'm sure at some point in time you've all had Martinelli's, especially you got to try the chopped salad, which is my favorite. But with talking to Tony today, I wanted to know how he arrived in Salina, Kansas, his background in the restaurant, which is very interesting, of how he got in the restaurant business, especially the Italian restaurant business. We talk a little bit about his wrestling. We talk about his community involvement and what's important to him about giving back to children in our community. So let's jump right into the episode of Tony Dong, community leader, Martinelli's Little Italy. So welcome, Tony, to the Community Leader Podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah.
I'm honored.
Yeah, it's interesting to see who we're going to have next on here. And every time we kept asking people, they said, man, you got to get Tony in here because of everything he does for the community. And so I couldn't think of a better person, kind of to be in here to say, because you're kind of, before we jump into this, let's tell everybody who you are, your family, and just 30 seconds of who you are.
So Tony Dong down at Martinelli's Little Italy. I have two daughters, Danielle, who is 20 years old, Adeline, who's 6, and my wife, Holly. So
nice. Okay. So before we even jump in there, let's even go back further then.
Yeah.
How did you get to Salina before? Because everybody knows, you're the face of Martinelli's. Let's just say
I've been
there's the face of Martinelli's. So let's talk about even before that, because one of the reasons I wanted to start this is I've known you for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. We've known each other, but I don't know a lot about you. I'm going to know that you came from Cloud County and wrestling. Other than that, I don't know a thing about you. So that's the reason I want to do this. I want to introduce you to the community, and we dive in a little deeper than the face of Martinelli. So start at, 18, 19 years old.
Okay, so 18, 19 years old. I'm graduating high school. I'm at Concordia High School.
Okay.
I'm convinced I'm going to wrestle in college, and I'm convinced it's going to be Fort Hays State because it's like March, it's April, and hey, people that have given out the scholarships have given them out, and it's over. So, and I think it was May, my coach calls me up, my high school wrestling coach, and he says, hey, there's this school in Missouri that wants you to come down for a visit, and I think they're going to give you a scholarship, and you need to do it. And he tells me, it's like, the name of the school is Southwest Missouri State University. And I was out at that point because it was like, how big can this place be? And it sounded tiny and weird, and it's in Springfield, Missouri, which back then you were driving 55 miles an hour, so it's 8 hours away. And I'm like, dude, coach, I don't even know if I can get there. And he's like, hey, I'll give you a ride. They're really serious about talking to you. And the way it worked out is they had extra money left over at the end of the year, and they were transitioning coaches. They were going from the old coach to the new coach. So the old coach wanted a full lineup, and I was a 118-pounder. I'm still a little guy, but I was a little guy, and they needed that weight field. So he's like, hey, they're going to give you all the money that's left over. And I'm like, all right, I'll check it out. I'm not promising anything. I go down there. Turns out there's 20,000 students there. It's huge. The campus is beautiful, and they're Division I wrestling, which is, the division up from Fort Hays. So I felt like,
wow.
I'm going to be going against, the big guys, and it was a great opportunity. So that's how I ended up there. So I ended up wrestling there for 5 years.
So it wasn't, I'd heard Cloud County. You didn't go to Cloud County at all?
No.
Wow.
So I grew up in Concordia, and at that point, Cloud County didn't have wrestling.
Okay.
So I was looking at, I knew I wanted to go to a 4-year school. So that was kind of like Hayes was the school that you would go to.
Yeah.
But
well, see, they can give you all that money because they know they don't have to feed you at 118 pounds, and you got to stay that weight.
That's right.
Like everybody else gets the bowl of stuff, and then here's yours.
Right. Yeah. Totally unnecessary meal plan.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so you went 5 years there.
Yes.
And then
so I wrestled there 5 years, and at the end of those 5 years, most people are done with their education and schooling. I still had a year left. So I had to get a job because, wrestling takes up like 20, 30 hours a week. So I had all this time to do something. So I got a job at a restaurant waiting tables. And I truly fell in love with that. It was like for the money, it was like really easy. It was fun. It was social. You're talking to people. So I fell in love with it. And that's the only job I've ever done since, 1993 or whatever.
And what kind of restaurant was that?
So it was called Lone Star Steakhouse and Saloon, which is it's actually a Wichita, Kansas company.
Okay.
A guy named Jamie Coulter owned it. And at that point, their first corporate store was in Springfield, Missouri. So the guy took the company public, got all this money, got his private jet, all of the, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And he opened up like 400 stores within like 5 years. And I got to be part of that. So I got to go around, open stores, help manage, and just kind of really learn the trade. So
cool.
Yeah.
And then tell me then, how do you arrive in Salina, Kansas? So what's the connection of that? So you were out working for Lone Star, you were in the restaurant business, and then how does Martinelli's even come about?
Okay, so Springfield, Missouri, working for Lone Star, and I eventually get on opening crews where we go around and open stores. Then eventually I'm a manager, so I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, helping manage a store there. And by this time, the company's kind of screwed up. It's got some problems. So there's these Crane brothers who were kind of in charge of these 5 or 6 stores in the Midwest. And they were like, we need somebody that we can send out anywhere to do anything. And I was that guy because, I'm single, I'm young.
Right.
It's like, I'll do whatever, I'll go.
Right.
And so I spent a couple of years working with the Crane brothers doing that, just going around fixing kitchens and stuff like that. And that was kind of my specialty. And let's see, at one point, at the end of my Lone Star tenure, we were in Hutchinson, Kansas. And that would be the closest store to Wichita, Kansas. So they wanted to make sure that they had like an A+ team. So Mike Crane, who was kind of my mentor, he was going to be the GM. And then I was going to run the kitchen. Then they had a couple service managers that I really liked. We're going to run the kitchen. So their thought was, we want this to be our flagship because, 30 minutes away is Wichita, right. And that's where all the corporate people come to check out Lone Star, so it's got to be good. And anyway, long story short, Mike leaves, and I'm sitting here in Hutchinson, Kansas. I'm like, what is, my mentor leaves the company to open his own thing, and he offered me a job, and it was like $8. It was, 1998, $8 an hour or something. And I'm like, dude, I can't do that, And so I put my resume out there, end up in Chicago working for a Italian outfit there. So, and that was Maggiano's Little Italy. So if you ever go to Maggiano's, it's going to be very familiar.
So he's probably laughing because he's from Chicago. My producer.
Yeah.
Matthew, have you eaten there before? Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so Matthew's from Chicago, our producer in there. So you guys probably couldn't hear that out there, but Matthew started chuckling, so I knew he'd probably been there before.
Yeah, Maggiano's is a great concept, man. And it was, I had my choice. There's like 4 of them at that point. There's like downtown, Oak Brook, Schaumburg, and Skokie. And they were like, Tony, you can work wherever you want. And I'm like, all right. So I start looking at rents in downtown, and it was impossible. I'm like, there's no way. I'd have to give up my car. And me being from Concordia, Kansas, or anywhere in Kansas, you got to have a car. And so I said, all right, I'll work out in the suburbs out in Schaumburg. So I did that. And then like 2 weeks into it, I figured out I should have gave up the car because every weekend, young guy, I'm driving all the way into the city to have fun. Yeah. And I was like, man, but hey, lesson learned. Yeah. So anyway, I'm working in Schaumburg, learning everything I can about that business as far as, how to prepare the food, the service, the financial aspect, everything I could. Because I wanted to, any position you want to get better at it. And during that time, my little brother who worked with me at Lone Star, Chris, he says, hey, I'm going to open a restaurant in Beloit, Kansas. If you want to invest, get it, send me some money. Because it's like April or something, he knows tax returns are coming in. So I send him like $3,000, and he says, all right, you're a 33% owner of this business.
For $3,000.
Yeah, for $3,000. And I'm like, this is going to go poorly, I can tell. And he gets in there, he opens it up, and I'm like, I can't figure it out because it was totally foreign to me that somebody could open a business. especially my little brother.
Yeah.
And he figures it out with, he says he put $6,000 in. I don't know. He might have put less. So he gets this thing open. It's real busy. And he's like, hey, can you come down and help me? And I'm like, yes, I can. It's 33% mine. I'm going. So I leave Chicago. I moved to Beloit, Kansas. And
which is not too far from home because you're from
no,
Concordia.
and that's, it's nice to get back home,
Okay.
It's nice to be around family. It's not it's like this, everything's good.
And so what's the name of the restaurant in Beloit? Do you remember?
Yep. County Seat Bar and Grill.
County Seat Bar
Yep.
and Grill.
And you know what? I bet some people listening will remember that place. Yeah. I mean, Aaron Householder, Soul Preachers, we used to have them play in the basement every once in a while.
Nice.
It was great. We'd have bands come through. But it was really fun. And it was making money and it was doing well. So Chris moved back to Concordia, opened a restaurant there, a county seat. And, I thought that being 33% owner of the business meant that I had about 33% of the decision making. And as you know, or maybe you don't, you've got 33% interest. And he's got 67%. He's making the rules. Yeah. So I'm like, man, I like working with Chris, but I like working for myself better. So in Beloit, you would go to Salina to shop. And we would, on my day off, I'd come down here. We'd go, to the mall. We'd go downtown. And we were looking around. And every time we'd come downtown. And the G. Willikers on the corner of Santa Fe and Walnut, it was never open. And I was looking in there. It's like, man, that'd make a good Italian restaurant, but it's never open, so there's nobody to talk to. And eventually, I called somebody, and they said, "Oh, I knew who it was, my Cisco rep." And he said, "Yeah, you need to talk to Chuck Carroll. He's the building owner." So all right, I'll talk to him. So I talked to Chuck, and he says, "Yeah, Eldon, the guy that owns G. Willikers, he's got a bunch of different businesses. I don't think he's interested. You get a hold of him. Maybe you can work out a deal with them." So that's what I did. Yeah. I worked out a deal.
Hearing G. Willikers makes me laugh. I mean, because that's the old, I was actually going to ask you if you remembered what was in there before that, because I was thinking, because for a lot of people who don't know some of my backstory, I was at Anderson Leather downtown when I was 22, 23 years old, and G. Willikers was there. And so that's how I remember it. And so what year is this, do you think, when what year did you start Martinelli's?
It was September 2001. Wow. So it's easy to remember because the New York stuff, and I remember me and John were going in to paint the building, the inside, and we're in the car driving there and hearing it on the radio, and we're like, dude, this is crazy. Yeah. We don't have cable at the restaurant yet, so I'm like, there's a bar down the street. Let's go to Tailgaters. Remember Tailgaters?
Oh yeah.
And I've never seen it as packed as it was during that time. I mean,
watching it.
Yeah, every seat in the place, the big TVs, and yeah, it was nuts. So that's how it's easy to remember because like 2 weeks later we opened up.
Okay, so let's backtrack on this because this is fascinating for me. Mm-hmm. You left your brother in Beloit, and you said, "I'm going to open up my own."
Yeah,
and the concept was Italian because that's what you were doing in Chicago. You learned that whole deal in Chicago.
Right, and there was no Italian in Salina. Nothing. I don't even know if there was a Fazoli's or anything like that.
Yeah, back then, probably nothing.
Yeah, and I was like, this is a good opportunity, and, I liked the building.
Yeah, and everything kind of worked out to bring it there. So, like, I remember when you opened up, one thing I remember, and it's still so true today, is I think of the red and white checkered tablecloths.
Yeah.
I think of the people dressed to the nines, like white shirts, black. I mean, did that come from your background of where you were at in Chicago, or is that just something you always had in your head?
No, it's kind of, you go to almost any Italian restaurant in a city, and that's kind of the standard uniform. Those bistro.
But that wasn't standard. Like I said, I think it was so new for Salina because there was no Italian. There was nothing really to compare it to. But I remember when you opened up, it was something different. It was crisp. It was clean. And it still is a staple for our downtown. I mean, just that location alone, it's probably turned out to be far better once they've done their downtown revitalization. the steeple across the street, everything that's there. Okay, so that's 2001.
So that's 2001. Yeah.
You opened up Martinelli's. And it's just yourself. Was your brother involved in this? Did you cash out of your 33% and became a millionaire or what?
No, yeah, I didn't get. I said, hey, Chris, if you want to invest in this, you can.
Yeah.
And he's like, nah, I'm good. And like looking back, he said, man, I should have took you up on that.
Yeah.
I'll take. I opened that restaurant for $10,000. That was it, and that probably wasn't the right way to do it, but I was very driven to get this thing open, and I went to a bank and they said, hey, come back to us when you have some assets.
Yeah.
It's like,
how old would you have been in 2001 when you opened that?
29, I guess.
29.
Yeah. So
yeah, you seem much younger than that. Like I was thinking you were going to say like 24, 25 on that. But so 29, you open up Martinelli's. Again, and I don't even know that we need to go deeper in that because for the people who are listening in Salina, you probably have eaten at Martinelli's, you know Martinelli's, and then what we'll spin off to is the reason you're really here is because of truly the community leader that you've become. But really, I want to say, so what Martinelli's does for the community, but truly you are the face of Martinelli's as well as your staff, but you truly are the face of it. And getting into the community leaders, the reason I wanted you to come on here is all of the non-for-profits that I go to, the auctions, all of this stuff that's there, I see you not only providing the food at no cost to these guys to give back to the community, but 9 times out of 10, you're there at the event serving the food.
Yeah.
So how important is that to you to give back to the community? And where does that drive come from that you're willing? Because we all know the restaurant business is small margins anyway, and tough with employees and everything that's there. So to take what a lot of people don't understand is, given our business, if I give away $1,000, I had to make almost $2,000 to give you $1,000.
Right.
So in the food industry, tell me a little bit what the drive is for you to give back to the community of Salina.
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, it feels good to give back. It's just like, hey, to be able to help people that, maybe earlier in your life, those people were helping you. You know what I mean? So the giving back part that makes you feel good is easy. But there's also, it's not all altruistic. There's that part where it's kind of good advertising to get your name out there and to be seen, and then to, provide things that people might use and think about your restaurant, kind of like, you think about it. So that's important to me, that, the advertising aspect, and then that just trying to do something nice here and there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think just giving back because again, they're raising money to put back in the community for people who maybe don't have everything or a little bit down on their luck and all, to put it that way. So again, I recognize every time that I see you out there that I can't imagine how many phone calls you get with all of the things. And you can't say yes to every one of them. There's just no way.
No, but we try to. We try to figure something out. So if there's an organization out there or somebody, needs something or an idea, I encourage them to call, because, if we can't give them everything they need, we could probably give them some gift certificates, or we could partner with them on a deal where, hey, like we do this for a lot of the schools where they will have some sort of offering or something like that where it's specific to Coronado Elementary. So we give back 20% of everything that we make selling that item. Or maybe it's like, hey, Friday, April, whatever, is Coronado Day, and everything that comes in that day, we're going to give back to, or not everything, but like 20% of it is going back to Coronado. I still got bills to pay. So
exactly. Well, I think Martinelli's is one part of you. The other part that I admire, and we were talking a little bit before the show, is, and I think you said it best when you said, look, if you're not failing, you're not trying. And so I was thinking about you coming on here, and I'm like going, okay, I really want to ask him some questions about these other businesses.
Yeah.
But he may be like, well, gosh, Todd, let's not talk about my failures or what I've done. And then I'm like, well, I've failed just as many times as well. Maybe people don't know about them. Like I had a paintball place down on 4th Street called Outrageous Paintball. We closed it up. We had the ice bar. That didn't work out. And, and maybe for other people it'd work out, but I wasn't interested in running a company that was making 40 grand a year, and I had all this liability and maybe made 40, could have made only 20. I don't really know. But it's like, if it doesn't work, I had to move on. And so let's talk about some of the ventures that you've tried. It's going to bring back some of the past for people to know. And so I'm going to name off the ones I know, and then you tell me about how that came about. Okay?
All right.
So I'm going to go all the way back to Martini's.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
So that one you said maybe has a little bit more pain to it.
Yes. Okay. So
let's talk about Martini's. Where was that located?
let's see. The old, what are they called?
The Sixth Street Pub. Yeah, I think it's where the Sixth Street Pub and where you throw the hatchet. That used to be a really nice steak restaurant called Martini's.
Yes.
And you and your brother?
Yeah, me and my brother
John
partnered on that, and we did that because we had a steakhouse background, and so we kind of knew that business. And looking back, hindsight, we could have made that work if it was about half the size. It was just too big. It was, there's like 40 or 50 tables in there, and Monday through Thursday, not a problem running it because it's, you're only going to fill maybe 20 tables, so you can cook steaks for 80 people. That's not a problem. But when you seat 50 tables on a Friday night, man, it gets burdensome for the kitchen. So anyway, but that was my first failure. So luckily I got out of the gate good with Martinelli's. So I was able to,
So you burn up all the cash that you made from Martinelli's.
So
put it into Martini's.
We opened Martini's, and I think we ran for 5 years almost.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That long? Wow.
And it never made any money.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big lessons I learned, is that, hey, you've got to, sometimes it's just not going to work, and you've got to either change things or just stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
So after 5 years and a lot of money, we were like, and it hurt, it sucked, because you got employees, you've got pride and all of these things, and you just have to do it. So we pulled the plug, and Rusty Leister, he was the landlord, and I always sing the praises of Rusty for this. I had I think a year left on my lease, and he said, "No, you're good."
Wow.
He never, and that would have been like 60, 70 grand that I did not have.
Yeah.
So that was awesome of him. So I always make sure to point that out. Rusty, he gets his name in the news for different things.
For all the bad stuff.
It's not always good.
Let's praise him.
But Rusty, he was really good to me.
Yeah. Good. So that was Martini's.
That was Martini's. Yes.
And so then I'm going to go to, maybe I'm missing something, but let's jump to 311.
111.
111. Okay.
Yes.
So 111, am I in sync? Is that the next one?
Yep.
Okay.
That would be the next one.
God, I feel like I'm stalking you, Tony.
No.
Like I know all of these your ventures that you do.
They've almost all been downtown, so it's worked out pretty good.
So 111, tell me about that.
111. And back to Rusty, he made it look really easy to make money in the bar business. So I was like, hey, we'll try that.
Right.
And it never really made any money, but it never really lost any money. So it was kind of a fun thing to do and to have. And I enjoyed having a bar. You always have a place to go drink, and everybody was real nice to you if you're the boss.
Exactly. So. Yeah. Same thing. So when you said you remember where Tailgaters is, that's
right.
That's where we opened up our bar,
Nice.
because I'm like, well, every entrepreneur needs to open up a bar. I mean, they're just cash cows. How can you not make money, Well, we found out very quickly that it's a tough business. And when you're paying 10% liquor tax in and 10% liquor tax out, the only people who were making the money were the state,
totally.
and the guys bringing the booze in.
That was a busy bar, too.
I know.
Go down there once.
I
I was like, man, this place is packed.
Yeah. Funny story on that is, the guy delivering the alcohol is like, I don't know how you guys aren't. You're pouring more Crown Royal and you're pouring more beer than anybody in town.
Dang.
And pretty soon I had to start looking at my employees going, okay, you guys are dressing nicer. You guys have nicer things, and I'm pouring all this, and don't have any money. It didn't take me long to figure out what was going on.
You get that in these cash businesses for sure.
So 111 was a bar. It was kind of a fun thing. Obviously, the name came from because it's 111 South Santa Fe. So that's where that name took me a while to figure that out. I'm not very smart, but I figured it out eventually. So 111 South Santa Fe, and then did you own that with your brother too? Because I remember
me and John.
John was working there at the time.
Yep.
Okay.
So we did that. And that was the thing. Whenever John was working, it always made a bunch of money. And then, like, if he was, doing something else, I was like, we're back to even again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's, it's kind of who you got in that spot.
And then after that, would that be what's my favorite place that closed down on Crawford Street?
Nope. There's
No?
one before that.
Okay. What do you got before that?
Oh, there's two. Okay. So there's.
See, I love this.
All right. There's Santa Cruz Burrito.
Okay. Remember
So
that?
Yeah. So that was, I'll be honest, it was a Chipotle / Qdoba knockoff.
Right.
And I think we did that for about 5 years, and that made really good money.
Now, did you start out with the truck first, or before you
No.
went into the brick and mortar next door to Martinelli's, or?
Nope. We went straight into the burrito shop.
Okay.
And, obviously I've ate a lot of those places, and I knew a manager from Qdoba, and he's not there anymore. So he took a vacation for a week, came down, and showed me how to do it. And I'm like, all right, because there's questions.
I mean,
about,
it's beans, rice, and chicken. How much
right?
in a tortilla?
But,
you messed
yeah,
that up. Come
but
on.
how does it, I didn't know how any of that worked. And
Yeah.
he's like, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
So I took that, and we ran with it for 5 years, and it worked. It did great. It made money. It was, fun to run. And I think within 6 months, I knew Chipotle was opening up, and then Qdoba was opening up. And I was sitting there doing the math, and I'm like, I don't want to I can't split that pie 3 ways and still make money.
Yeah.
And then, taking my experience from Martini's, this is like, all right, this is going to suck, but we're going to have to close it. So
Yeah.
we did.
And it goes back to people don't realize that the profit, like if they see you busy, they're like, oh, he must be a millionaire. Look how busy he is in there. It's like, the profit margin is pretty small on there. And if there's any small of an area or a big, large piece of appliance goes out and it's $15,000 or $20,000 for that equipment, or you have to sign a new lease for it, it takes the profit margin. I mean, I've never been in the restaurant business, but I've watched several people do it, and
Right.
it gets kind of tough to make that work in the restaurant business.
Right. Because, you're looking at maybe 5, like they say the ones that are running good, 5 to 10% is what they make on a dollar. And, if you start knocking a couple thousand here and a couple thousand there, there's none left. So you got to be on top of it.
So Santa Cruz, we said, okay, we're done with that. So then what was the next venture?
Okay. So then me and my other brother, Chris, the one that I did county seat with.
Now that, okay.
We did the Ultimate Fighting Federation, the UFF.
I did hear about this.
Yeah. So, and we, that was the first time I ever got a cease and desist letter from the UFC, because I didn't know you couldn't. We're naive. It's like, you can't have Ultimate Fighting. You can have UFF. But Ultimate Fighting, that phrase is trademarked by them. Okay. So we changed the name to the United Fighting Federation. And that was all fun. We did 13 fights. We did them in Wichita, Fort Riley, Salina, obviously. We did 2 outdoors in Salina, one at the old rodeo arena, one at the indoor, the heck was that? The indoor rodeo arena or something,
right.
I don't know what the name of it is. And did a couple at the, what is that? The Masonic Temple.
Masonic Temple, yeah.
Yep, that was awesome. Those were our best ones. Those were like sold out.
So where does that come from, though?
I'm a wrestler.
Well, I know, but you're back there like in the restaurant business, and all of a sudden, like, I just want to know where that entrepreneurial spirit comes from, that you say, hey, let's just start doing Ultimate Fighting. I mean, are you watching this on your TV and you go, I could do that?
Yeah, we were big fans, obviously. And then the other thing was, we knew a few people that were doing it from when like we were in college. There was a couple guys that were either fighting or coaching. So that kind of gave us, an idea, somebody's, brains to pick. We could talk to them, and they would, tell us, it's like, well, this is how it works and all that. And that was fun. We did 13 fights, and they mostly made money. But, we did one at the Stiefel on the stage. That was awesome.
Really?
Yeah. So,
but see, what's different about you that I admire, I respect, and I see in you is most people have this thought, I'm going to open up a burrito place. I've been to Chipotle. Let's open one up. And they never do it.
Yeah.
And so what I'm watching in you is like, I'm trying to get inside of who Tony is, because I know there's something different in there from a true entrepreneur, because you just don't start up this many businesses. Many people think about it, and then they just never do it. Like, they never follow through. They never get scared. And most of them are scared because they're like, well, what if it fails? And so I know that some of the most successful people like yourself, it's like, okay, like, who cares if it fails? Like, let's just go do it and see if it does. And so kind of a little bit for me when people say, well, what's my strength that I have that I see in you is I can almost see it before it's even started. You know what I mean? Like I can see the steps, the process, what needs to happen. And they say you can see it with the end in mind, like visualize with what it's going to look like before it's even started. Right. And so I see that in you a lot of where you're like going, okay, I could do that. I could do that. And I don't know if you're at the point yet where like I'm starting to realize of going, okay, my mind can dream up what my ass can't cover. You know what I mean? And that's really where I'm at, because there's a lot of big things I would love to do. And I'm like, I could probably figure that out, but I don't know that I want to write the check if it doesn't, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's some big stuff, and then I'm doing some little stuff on the side, but there's all these big things on there. So I do recognize, and where that comes from, I'm not sure inside you, but it takes a lot to put these ideas into real life.
Right. Yeah. And I've got my thoughts on that, you know, just as far as, you know, I think, you know, you got to be a risk taker a little bit as an entrepreneur. And me being half Chinese, and maybe, you know, that not gambling addiction, but that enjoyment of gambling and risking is, you know, part of it. But then as you get older, kind of like you're talking about, is like, hey, you get a little more risk averse. Would I, you know, want to do the MMA company if I was this age, you know, because there's big liability issues,
right.
You know. So that's one of the things is, you know, nice to be young, because, hey, you know what, you take a big hit, you can recover.
Right.
But as you get older, it's like, all right, I got to be, you know, I've got, you know, I got a house, I got some kids, I've got a wife, you know, I can't go around just, you know, making bad decisions or questionable decisions. Yeah. So
well, let's move past the fighting then.
Yeah.
What's the next venture you did?
All right. So then Umami Bowl. So we had
my favorite.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I told you the other day, I'm like, if you bring that back, I'll invest in it. Like, just because I want to eat there. You know what I mean? I don't even care if it makes money. Right? I just want to be able to eat there.
And I've figured it out too. So so we did Umami Bowl. We started as a food truck. You know, food trucks were kind of all the rage then. And I like that kind of food. You know, I really enjoy, you know, Korean barbecue and any kind of stir fry, you know, whatever it is. I like that. And I saw, you know, the idea was it's like Asian Chipotle. So, and you know, I already did Santa Cruz burrito. I can do this. So it did well as a food truck. And then we opened up as a restaurant over there on Crawford, and it also did well. The sales were always good. You know, we're projecting way better than what my break-even point would be. But the food cost was way too high. And what happened was we bought a bowl that had a sloped edge. It was like a 24, and this is all silly stuff, but it's a 24-ounce bowl with a sloped edge. And what happened was the 24 ounces is if you level it off, not with that slope on there. So everybody's just piling food into that slope. And, you know, before you know it, there's like 25%, 30, 40% more food in that bowl. So it like wrecked the food cost.
Yeah.
And
I do remember that bowl because it was it had a big slope to it. It was a different kind of bowl.
And it was cool looking.
Yeah, it was cool looking. Yeah, you were just losing 25% more for the coolness of what was going on.
And looking back, it's like, okay, if I'd have changed that, we'd have a better shot at it.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, like the things just that you learn. Yeah, the things that you learn by you know, just trying and putting it together. What is the most we'll get back to some other stuff on there, but like what is it that you learned from Umami Bowl? Am I going to say that right? Yeah, Umami Bowl.
Yep.
That you look back now, other than the bowl. So that's a big one. But is it labor that kills the restaurant business for you, or is it the food cost, or a little bit of both? Or
so those are the big two. So you've got, they call it a prime cost between basically those two items, that if you can't have your prime cost below 65%, you're not going to make money. So between labor and food cost, you've got to be below 65. So if your labor is 30%, your food cost has to be 35% or less. And, you know, in the Italian restaurant business, that number is you're going to have more labor and less food costs just because of the nature of pasta. So, it varies a little bit, but at the end of the day, when you add those two numbers up, you need to be at 65% to make money.
So what makes, well, let's finish that. Well, don't let me forget to ask this question. I want to know what makes Martinelli's then different than the other 4 or 5 that didn't work. But let's jump past. Is there one past Umami Bowl? Is there? Have you done it? What have you done there since then?
Let's see. Nico's Little Italy in Manhattan.
Okay.
And they're killing it. Nicolette Unruh, that's kind of a neat story. She went to Bethany, and I think we've worked together 15 years, maybe longer, something like that, a long time. And she went and got her business degree at Bethany, went out and got a job, decided she didn't like it, came back to Kansas Wesleyan, got her master's degree, so she started working at the restaurant again, went out, got a job, didn't like it. So eventually she lives in Manhattan, and for 5 years she's driving back and forth from Manhattan. Then the pandemic hits, and it's like nightmare, for restaurants. It was a mess. So she comes up with this idea is like, hey, I'm driving back and forth to Manhattan all the time anyway. How about I do a deal? I'll put it on Facebook. I'll manage everything, and we'll just take the food to Manhattan, a parking lot, the Walmart or whatever, and people can come pick up the food after they order online. So we did that, and we were doing like, she would take, I think we'd top out at like 70 orders or something. We'd have to stop because, it was just, we couldn't do it more than 70.
Yeah.
And it'd be like $7,000 in sales and this was back when.
So basically she was putting it on Facebook that Martinelli's will deliver to Manhattan.
Yep.
And she would come pick up all of the food and then distribute it in the parking lot.
Yep. Exactly. It was great. And she would do like $7,000 in sales. Just boom, like that. And then it was like, oh, it worked there. Let's try Chapman. Let's do Abilene. Let's do Great Bend. Let's do Wichita. And so we did all of these spots during those couple months where you couldn't have people sitting in your restaurant.
Yeah.
So it worked out great. And during that time, there's a lot of open restaurant buildings. A lot of places that just weren't going to make it, and they're deciding to quit. So she found a spot in Aggieville there and said, hey, you want to do something with me here? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. And, just because, she's so driven. Yeah. And she found a spot. And my one caveat was, hey, it's got to be a short lease. Because if it doesn't, because we opened it during the pandemic.
Again, learning lesson from Martinis.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, because, I didn't want to get hooked up for 5 years and the restaurant business just doesn't work. But she got that 6-month lease. We opened up. It worked great. It took off, and we are adding about 10 tables this month. So there's a spot that was right next to Nico's, that about 1,000 square feet, and it's up for lease. So we're grabbing it and getting a little more space. So it's
awesome.
So that's a success.
Yeah, a success. So is it the same pretty much food then as
Martinelli's? Yes.
Okay. So same recipes. She's just running it down there. So rather than called Martinelli's, it's called Nico's.
Right. Nico's. Yeah. After her. And she does some different things. They've got a smaller kitchen. They've got Eric, who's the kitchen manager, but he's also a great chef. Yep. And he runs some really good specials. And yeah, man, I couldn't be prouder of those people down there.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. What's next?
What do
you got going? Was there anything after Nico's, or
Okay, so I don't know how much time we got, but
no, I don't care what the time is, man. I'm enjoying it. If they want to listen, they listen, and if they want to tune out, they tune out.
All right. So let's see. I've been my own boss I haven't had a boss. Every customer that comes in is my boss, but I haven't had a true boss in like 22 years, 23 years, something like that. And I try to keep up. I try to educate myself and learn. And with the internet, there's programs out there where they'll coach you. They'll teach you how to run a restaurant, all of this. And I'm like, you know what? In the last 20 some years, there's got to be new information, new technology, new things that I can learn. And that's what I did. I went and paid for one of these programs, and I don't even know how long it lasts, but I might just keep going with it because I like having a guy tell me, it's like, hey, look at these numbers. This could be better, or whatever. So I'm doing that right now.
So even after all these years in the restaurant business, you're still coachable.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because things have surely changed.
Right.
So I'm trying to learn some new tricks, and there has been a lot of opportunity in the restaurant business just with all of the money that's kind of been floating around, because a big chunk of that COVID money went to business owners.
Correct.
And some of these guys didn't necessarily need that extra couple $1,000,000. So
Right.
they want to do something with it. So I've been talked to by a lot of business owners that want their own Martinelli's in their town, like places. I mean, and I don't know if I'd ever go there, and that's why I haven't said yes
Right.
yet, but like Topeka and Des Moines, Iowa,
Right.
and, Wichita.
So have you ever thought about is Martinelli's franchisable, do you think, of something that you could sell? I mean, has that ever entered your mind?
No, not really, just because I don't have the vision for it.
Okay.
I think you got to have, and the forethought to figure something like that out.
Yeah.
So I probably,
Well, it's a
who
whole
knows?
nother deal. Legalities, attorneys, writing up everything. And if it's not your passion, then it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you know when you're passionate about something, and if franchising isn't that, then it's not that.
I love the idea, but
Yeah.
I'm just like, hey, I
Yeah.
don't know how to do it.
Nice. So you're out doing that. So anything, would you ever consider coaching, or is that kind of what they're asking for? Like, could you go on and start your own coaching company of how to start up a restaurant? Is that something that you're interested in? Would you be a consultant? I mean, obviously you were a little bit for the Manhattan one.
Yeah. So that's not really kind of where my passion lies, I guess. If I was going to coach something, it'd be, wrestling,
Right.
Which I'm doing now, which I never thought I'd be doing, because I got a 6-year-old and she wants to wrestle.
Ah.
So, but no, man, I think ultimately and this is part of what this coaching is going to help me decide, is like, hey, you just do the 2 restaurants you got, or do you take it another notch, get to 5 or 6 where you have a little, you're a little more hands off, where you're just kind of going in and doing the fun things, like just, going in and talking to tables and, doing that sort of thing, not actually grinding out the inventory and, making sure that all your costs are in line, having managers take more of that responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
well, at some point you have to have the conversation with yourself that says, when's enough?
right. Yeah.
Because you could go franchise that, but it's like you're smart enough to know, and it's kind of like with me, do I take my companies and franchise them and do whatever? It's like, but God, do I want to be in Wichita 3 nights a week? And do I want to be away from my family? And do I want to be over here? And do I want to go do that? Do I want to take on the risk? Or is just what I'm running right here and spending time with my kids and my family? And as you just mentioned, being the coach to your daughter, if you go franchise that for the next, you're gone.
Right. And
you're gone.
Right. And that's one of the big things that I'm, not struggling with. It's like, I'm trying to decide. It's like, hey, can I live a good life trying to run a bunch of different businesses? And, there is a way. People do it all the time.
Yeah.
And, so I'm at kind of there's a turning point here. There's a Y in the road. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And how old are you?
51.
51. God, you don't know. I'm 53. I'm waiting for you to say like 45 or something. Yeah. That's crazy. You're 51. I would not have guessed that. Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, then you are at that fork in the road. I was sitting there thinking, God, at 40s, you still got some time. At 51, although I can say this, like I really believe that I've been able to do way more things from 50 to 53 than I ever was able to do from 30 to 40, because, now I've got a little bit more money than I had before. I can, not a lot, but I've got a little bit, enough that I can start making some better decisions and say, okay, I want to invest in that, or I can help this person out, or I can do that. Or it's like putting this studio together. You know what I mean? It's like, this is more money than I ever made my entire life when I was 25, 26, and 27 combined.
Right.
And then able to put something like this together, because you get to that point in your life where you're like, what do I really want to do? And so for me, I'm whatever I do, I'm going to live in Salina most of the part of my time. So most of the investing I'm doing is in Salina. And so I imagine your name is so well known, attached to Martinelli's, that you could do about anything you wanted and probably be pretty successful in Salina. I don't know that you have to go branch out to somewhere and start something amazing.
Right.
So I'm just trying to wonder, what's the next step for you? Like let's future pace out just even 5 years. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So, and this is where I decide. It's like, hey, like it seems like 5 like Martinelli's type restaurants would be the kind of turning point where it's like, hey, you could be really hands off. You could just go do the fun stuff, and not have to grind 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week in the restaurant. So, but and the other upside to that is that I get to provide opportunities to people that are working for me now. Because at some point you top out as a manager, but as like maybe a general manager, you can make, whatever it is, which is, quite a bit, because that's what Nicolette does. She's part owner of the restaurant, but she also, takes her salary out of the restaurant. And if, I open a couple more, I could get, one of my managers, Kelly, she could open her own restaurant somewhere, or Richard, who's been with me for, 15 years, 16 years, he could go do his own thing. Yeah. So that's the other part, is like, I kind of like the idea of me being able to provide opportunity to the people that have been so loyal and done such a good job for me.
Good. Because the hardest thing is finding that person. Nicolette is finding somebody like that you could send out to Wichita or Topeka with your same passion and run it. Because if you're going to be a little bit of hands off, that, you could lose $50,000 in a month.
Yes, easily.
Like if somebody doesn't do something right. And so if you're not going to be truly hands-on, it's got to be the right fit and the right person.
Right. Yeah. You got to find that person that thinks like an owner.
Yeah.
This is like, they've got to have ownership in the restaurant. That's one of the things about Nicolette, is that she does truly own a percentage of the restaurant. Yeah. So she is like very committed and driven to make sure that it works. And, I like that, have a little skin in the game, make sure that, you just don't just walk away. It's like you want to make sure that thing is successful.
Yeah.
And
well, this has turned in more to an entrepreneurial one than it is so much on of me driving or diving into the community part of it. But it is like, I really can say that Martinelli's is a big part of our community. Like, I can't think of how many weddings you've catered, how many graduations you've done. And that was the thing I was going to mention before, as I'm going back, is when nobody would cater, like there was no place to go. You know what I mean? Like you hit that niche right in between there where people will be like, oh, you're having 50 people over. Oh, well, call Tony. He'll set you up with 50 people. Oh, you're having 200. Call Tony. He'll cater for 200 people. You're having 10. You always made it work. Like, that's one thing I always want to say, is no matter whatever function we were having while we were building our business, whether I was doing a family gathering, whether I was having a family reunion, and all I really needed was the chopped salad. I mean, you guys were right there, and you were able to provide everything. And I think that's what's made, whether you know it or not, to me, that's what's made you successful. Is very rarely do I hear you say no.
Yeah.
And I don't, and you better, I think you may want to start to learn that a little bit more, but really that's what's made you successful. Every time I've ever been on a board, whether it's the Girl Scouts or whether it's been on the CAPS board or whether it's been on being involved with Love Chloe, like when they ask you, you've always stepped up and said, hey, if it's for the better of the community, we're in.
Yeah.
And so I want to admire and I want to recognize you for that in the community, because there's a lot of new restaurants that have come to our town that once you give them the $10 goes somewhere else. It doesn't stay in the community. And every dollar that you have down here stays in the community, and you're always reinvesting that back, whether it's time, food that you're donating to people. So anyway, just wanted to commend you on that, because
thank you.
It's very recognizable, and I think everybody who knows you would say the same thing if they given the opportunity to say that. So,
well, we love serving the community, whether it's, and that's one of the things we talk about all the time, is that we're kind of stewards of special moments in people's lives, whether it's getting engaged, having a wedding. God, we've been doing a lot of funerals lately. That just like from having your baby at Salina Regional and coming down for your first meal to, the end of life stuff. It's,
Yeah.
we try to take care and make sure that we realize that it's not just another table or another order going out, but it's truly something that is important to them.
Yeah.
We got to remember that. So,
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up, and I've asked this question to many people.
Okay.
Some of them, it's stumped them.
okay.
I got to ask you this question because you're in the restaurant business, so
Yes.
this will be interesting for you.
Okay.
Ready for the question?
I'm here. Let's hear it.
You went to the doctor, and they gave you 24 hours to live.
Okay.
You've got to stay in Salina.
Yeah.
Where are the next 3 places you would eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And at that location, what is it that you would have?
Oh, man. Okay.
So let's start out with breakfast.
So breakfast, I'm going to Russell's.
Wow. Okay.
And, man, I always get the same thing. So it's going to be the pork chops, the breakfast pork chops with Bob's hash browns. And
Okay.
it's like huge. It's delicious. Get to take some home. Then for lunch, I got a lot of friends in the restaurant business around here too.
I
I
know.
love them all. But
That's why I haven't been asked this question lately, but I wanted for you. I'm going to put you on the hot seat.
right, okay. So for lunch, man, I think I'm going to let's see, La Casita. I think I'm going to do that. And again, always getting the same thing. So it's going to be the hot pork steak chili dinner with half beans, half rice, and iced tea. It's going to be awesome.
La Casita is my lunch too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you always get the same thing?
Yeah, mine's the Anthony special though.
All right.
Oh, I've never tried anything else except the Anthony special.
So. It's easy. You don't have to look at the menu. It's like, I know what I want. So, and then dinner, of course, I'm going to Martinelli's.
Oh, nice.
And here's the move at Martinelli's. You got to start with the toasted ravioli for your appetizer. You're getting a bottle of Chianti, and then you are splitting the chopped salad with somebody. Then I'm getting a ribeye, medium rare, with the potatoes, and then finishing off with 2 scoops of spumoni. And that's it.
What's spumoni? How does it go with that?
So it's ice cream, basically. It's a Italian ice cream. It has cherry, pistachio, and chocolate ice cream.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And then
then I die.
And then
That's it.
then you're out.
happy.
And then you're out. Yeah. I tell people that, and they're like, "Well, that's the most morbid question to ask." And I'm like, "Not really. Like it's a great little icebreaker, and then it lets me know what people are doing in the community." So it's kind of funny if you watch it. I can't remember who said Martinelli's chopped salad.
Oh, yeah.
But that was their thing. They're like, at lunch, I'm going out with a Martinelli's chopped salad, and then
Nice.
but Russell's has been pretty good. For what's going on. And then we've run into a lot of people who say, well, I don't even eat breakfast. But it is interesting, the places that, people will visit in the restaurant industry and what goes on. But anyway, anything else you want to add of what you got going on? I mean, again, I appreciate your time of being here and have always appreciated your friendship, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, your commitment to the community. And number 3, just always being, I mean, your energy even today is always infectious. It's great, and I just like being around you. So
Thank you. Well, and I guess if I had to say anything, and this isn't something we do very often, but something that I like to do is that, there's all these athletic programs and there's camps and all these things going on that cost money. And I know that there's a lot of kids out there that can't afford that. And I would have been one of those kids that couldn't afford to go to, every wrestling camp I wanted to, or, basketball or baseball, whatever sport it is. And I encourage those kids to come talk to me and see if I can't do something for them, because I love doing that, because there's a huge payoff for a kid that's able to stay in some sort of team sport or even individual sport or anything like that. And if they just need a little financial help, I love doing that. So
great.
That's what I got.
Love it. Tony Dong, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And thanks for being on Community Leaders, and thank you for everything you do in the community.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.